Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sarah's Pondering. So, today I want to give you my number one tip to navigate conflict with whoever you're in conflict with, right? It can be your spouse, your partner, a date, it can be a friend, family member, work colleagues, boss, whatever it is, right? So that we can stay centered within ourselves and also navigate the conflict with more grace and more self-confidence. So we've all been in one of those situations where, let's say, your partner, says something, for example, defends himself, right? And you're just there and you're kind of like, well, I expressed something about myself, maybe I placed a boundary, and your partner becomes all defensive and goes on about, all this stuff. And you're just there kind of like, oh, this feels disconnecting. I don't feel heard. I don't feel seen. I feel discomfort. And I feel that there's a part within me coming up that is being triggered, right? And I'm saying a part within me is triggered because through the lens of parts work and internal family systems, you are existing with many parts within yourself. And in internal family systems, we can also access an aspect within ourselves that is not a part. That aspect within us is curious, compassionate, understanding, courageous, calm, right? And when we go through a conflict, we really want to find that center of us being in our self-energy, in this curious, compassionate, understanding, courageous, calm state, right? Or what I also like to say, love, right? In your truth and in your love. So when you have a situation where you feel, through your body sensations, you notice, oh, my nervous system is being activated right now, right? The first thing to do is just notice that your nervous system is activated. And then become curious, how does it feel like? What emotions are coming up? What thoughts are coming up? What parts are coming up, right? So maybe you have a part, that is sitting over here and that feels attacked. That has the story of, oh no, him defending himself means that, he always has to be right. He doesn't listen to me. Now it's all about him. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard, right? And I don't feel, important. It feels dismissive towards what I said because he's going on about, how he was right and what he was saying, holds truth, right? So the first thing to do is can I see that part within me? And can I find compassion for that part? And how we do that is just by asking ourselves oh, how do I feel towards that part or that emotion or that sensation that is coming up within me, right? How do I feel towards it? Now, the goal is to come to a place where we feel compassion and understanding, right? So when we can truly say I understand that part, I understand why it's feeling that way, because the way the other person is seeing it does feel intrusive, does feel, kind of a bit harsh, right? Maybe in the tone, maybe in the words they say, whatever it is, right? So I understand why that part is feeling like that. And then let that part know that. And what often happens is when the part feels acknowledged and we are accessing, when you feel understanding and when you feel compassion and curiosity for the part that, feels attacked and has all these stories going on, right? When we feel compassion for that, then we are in our self-energy. We are in this aspect within us that is love. Understanding is love. There's no distinction between them. Understanding is love. So when I understand that part, I love that part, right? And I can acknowledge it. I can tell to that part, like, I see that you're feeling this, and it makes sense. And then see how that part responds. And this is how we oftentimes diffuse, first of all, our own trigger, right? So when we are in conflict, right, we cannot come, a lot of times it is really hard to come to a conclusion, to work through it in a, proactive and constructive and creative way, because we have the parts that are activated and triggered. And the first thing we need to do is really kind of like not force ourselves to calm down, but acknowledge that there is this part, and by the acknowledgement and understanding of it, it starts to soothe. And once you diffuse your own trigger, you can open up to the other person who is triggered, to their part that is coming up, right? So the next question is, once that part feels kind of like a bit relaxed, right? It was able to calm down a little bit, just by mere attention. We're not telling it to relax. We're just seeing it with our presence, like, oh, I see you. And it's like, oh, yeah, I know, it feels like that. And, what you can also say is like, you know what? I bet there's also a part within him that feels like you. And I think that one is just currently speaking, right? So the question then becomes, where is the love in the part of that person speaking? How do I feel towards the part that is speaking? Now, when I say, or when I ask for the love aspect, in internal family systems, we always come through a lens of finding the hidden good intention of every single part, no matter how they show up, what behaviors, what patterns, what thoughts, what beliefs they show. Everything they do is actually in service of love, even if it doesn't seem like it, or even if it doesn't, feel like it, and it feels disconnecting instead of connecting, right? So can I see the bid for love in that part that is currently acting out in front of me? The part of the other person, where is the love aspect in that? And maybe you'll find that by them being so defensive, right, that all they want to be is seen in a good light by you. They might feel guilt. They might fear that you resent them, right? So they have to justify whatever they did, however they didn't show up for you. And that might disappointed you. And they're scared of disappointing you, because that would mean that they might lose you. Now, they don't want to lose you. Just imagine that. And this is a bid for connection and love. When we can see past what is actually playing before us, right? The behavior itself. When you can see past that, what is the intention? The intention is not that he wants to be right. The intention is that he wants to be seen as good. He wants me to acknowledge him, to see him, not to resent him, right? So, and then we can ask ourselves, like, wow, how do I feel towards that? Well, oh my gosh, I understand it. I wouldn't want to feel that way either, right? And that's when we start to diffuse the whole conflict. Because when we understand our own part and the part of the other person, and that both of them are in service of love, even if it doesn't show up in a way that feels loving, we can then create a totally different story or a totally different outcome in this conflict. So instead of having the part that feels attacked, right, go on and be like, yeah, but, and then counterattack, or maybe, freeze or fawn or run away, or, have their own, whatever they do, whatever their go-to tactic is to kind of cope with what is going on and playing out right now, right? Whatever their protective strategy is, instead of that part engaging with the other part, your self energy is engaging now with the part of the other person. And the self energy has a completely different way of dealing with conflict. Now, instead of that part counterattacking or doing whatever it does automatically, you then maybe just be there. Oh, honey, I understand you. I understood you all along. It's okay. And could it be that a part within you is trying to, defend yourself right now? Because honestly, there was never an ounce of resentment. You're fine. I love you. It's all okay. Right? So we can, calmly just acknowledge and be like, I see you. To that part, I see you. I see you. I'm here. It's okay. Now imagine when we deal with conflict in that way. And I'm not saying that, certain conflicts are bigger, have deeper, things we need to work through. Where it's really about meeting each other's needs, because, relationships are transactional. But the way we deal with it, the way we approach it, becomes much more creative, becomes much more loving. You can still set your boundaries, but you're going to set them in a completely different way. You're going to set them compassionately, right? Because you're holding yourself, like the parts within yourself, you're acknowledging those, right? And you know that they are important and they have their needs and they have their, feelings, emotions, and all that stuff going on. And you also know the other person has that. And then when we come from that self-energy, we can place boundaries in a more creative way. And sometimes, we just lovingly walk away. That's okay too. If it's a really toxic relationship or anything, that is okay too. And your parts will let you know what they need. Right? And the biggest takeaway from that also is that, you understand that it has nothing to do from the beginning. It was never against you. Whatever they are saying, it was never against you. On the contrary, they fear being seen in a bad light. They fear losing love. They fear losing acknowledgement, right? Sometimes so strongly that it, shows up in an unhealthy way, yes, and then we need to find our own way to dealing with it, right? But this is not about that. This is a different topic, and there's nuance, as always. But if you're in a healthy relationship, and we all have stuff come up in healthy relationships, be it friendships or spouse or whatever, right? We can then navigate conflict in a much better way and find connection, again, in conflict or through conflict. So try it out. If you want to work with me, this is the practice of internal family systems. And I'm training in that, so I can also help you with really embodying internal family systems for your own parts and then also in your relationships. Because this is basically, you are working with your inner parts, which you are in relationship with, right? And when you're able to navigate your internal relationship with all the parts, you can very easily do that as well with other people. And this is really amazing how your internal state really affects your relationships outside as well. So if you're interested into diving that, let me know. The link is in below if you want to work with me. And until then, or until next time, have a good week. And I hope that was inspiring, insightful, and you could learn something from that. And try it out. Try it out on your next conflict that you have, because sooner or later there will be one coming up, because it's damn life. Have a good one and see you next time.